I owe you an apology. Not a personal one exactly, but one on behalf of the entire medical and nutritional establishment that has spent decades telling you to fear your backyard, to distrust plants your great-grandmother used every single day, and to reach instead for a prescription bottle every time your blood sugar climbed too high. I am deeply sorry for that. Because right now, as you are watching this, there may be growing within a few feet of your front door, along your garden fence, or in a pot on your windowsill, 11 of the most powerful natural compounds ever studied for blood sugar regulation. And most people walk right past them every morning without a second thought. Let me be honest with you. I have been practicing medicine for over 2 decades, and I have watched countless patients arrive in my office clutching their glucose meters with that look in their eyes. You know the one. That mixture of fear and exhaustion and frustration that comes from doing everything right, from following the dietary guidelines, from taking the medications, from walking every evening, and still watching those numbers climb. I see it every single week. And for a long time, I did what my training told me to do. I adjusted doses, I added medications, I referred to specialists. But the question that kept coming back to me was this: why is it that certain populations around the world, people living in rural areas of India, parts of the Caribbean, communities across Central America, showed dramatically lower rates of type 2 diabetes for generations? And many of those same communities happen to use these exact plants in their daily food and medicine? That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern worth paying attention to. Before I go any further, I want to ask you something directly, and I want you to answer in the comments below this video. How long have you been living with elevated blood sugar or type 2 diabetes? Write the number of years in the comments. 1 year, 5 years, 15 years. Whatever it is, I want to know, because this community is filled with people just like you. And your experience matters here. And if you are not yet subscribed to this channel, I want to ask you to do that right now. Not because it helps an algorithm, but because I publish information like this every single week. The kind of information that most doctors simply do not have time to share in a 10-minute appointment. If you want someone in your corner who will tell you what the research actually says, click that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I will be here. Now, let me explain something that will change the way you think about plants forever. Every pharmaceutical drug that targets blood sugar regulation, and I mean every single one, works through a biological mechanism. It either blocks an enzyme, stimulates a receptor, slows digestion, or improves how cells respond to insulin. What most people do not realize is that plants have been doing these exact same things for millions of years. Long before human beings ever synthesized a molecule in a laboratory, plants were producing chemical compounds whose sole biological purpose was to interact with animal metabolism. The reason this matters for you is that many of the compounds found in common medicinal herbs are not vague, untested folk remedies. They are chemically specific molecules that have been identified, isolated, and studied in clinical trials with measurable results. The challenge has always been that the pharmaceutical industry has no financial incentive to study a plant you can grow in your backyard for free. So the research exists, but it rarely makes it into standard medical practice. That ends today, at least for you. Let me walk you through all 11 of these herbs, and I want you to pay close attention, because by the time we reach the 11th one, you will understand something about your body that most people living with diabetes never learn. The first herb is bitter melon, and I know what you are thinking. You have heard of it. Maybe you have even tried it and gave up because the taste is, well, exactly what the name promises. But let me give you a reason to reconsider. A study published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology in 2011, involving 95 participants with type 2 diabetes, found that bitter melon juice produced a statistically significant reduction in fasting blood glucose levels over a 12-week period. But the reason this works is what you need to understand. Bitter melon contains at least 3 compounds that function differently. Polypeptide P, which behaves similarly to insulin by directly stimulating glucose uptake in cells. Charentin, which activates glucose transporter proteins in muscle tissue. And vicine, which influences how the pancreas responds to sugar in the blood. Think of it this way. Your muscle cells have locks on their surface, and glucose is the key that needs to get inside. Insulin is normally the one that opens those locks. Bitter melon essentially creates a duplicate key. You can grow bitter melon in a container garden in most temperate climates. It needs a trellis and full sun, and within 60 days you will have fruit. The fresh juice diluted with water taken before meals is how it has been used traditionally and how most clinical studies have administered it. The second herb is fenugreek, and this one may already be sitting in your spice cabinet right now. Fenugreek seeds contain a specific type of soluble fiber called galactomannan, and this fiber behaves in your digestive system in a very particular way. When you eat a meal, that food needs to be broken down before glucose can enter your bloodstream. The rate at which that happens determines your blood sugar spike. Galactomannan forms a thick gel in your intestines that physically slows the movement of food and the absorption of sugars. A meta-analysis published in Nutrition Journal in 2014 reviewed 10 randomized controlled trials and found that fenugreek supplementation significantly reduced fasting blood glucose and improved hemoglobin A1C. The reduction in post-meal glucose spikes in some trials was as high as 46%, but fenugreek does something else that most people do not know about. It also appears to improve insulin sensitivity in peripheral tissues, meaning your cells become better at responding to the insulin your body already makes. You can use fenugreek seeds soaked overnight in water and consumed in the morning before breakfast, or you can add the ground seeds to food. 2 teaspoons per day is the amount used in most studies showing meaningful results. The third herb is berberine-containing plants, and I need to spend a little more time here because this is the one that genuinely stunned the scientific community. Berberine is an alkaloid compound found in several plants including barberry, golden seal, and Oregon grape, all of which can be grown in home gardens in many parts of the United States and Europe. A landmark meta-analysis published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology in 2015 reviewed 27 randomized clinical trials involving over 2,500 patients. The researchers found that berberine was as effective as metformin, one of the most prescribed diabetes medications in the world, at lowering fasting blood glucose, post-meal blood glucose, and hemoglobin A1C. Let that sink in for a moment. A compound found in backyard shrubs performed equivalently to a pharmaceutical drug that generates billions of dollars in annual sales. The mechanism is remarkable. Berberine activates an enzyme inside your cells called AMPK, which functions as the master switch for cellular energy metabolism. When that switch is activated, your cells pull more glucose out of the bloodstream, your liver produces less glucose on its own, and your fat cells become more responsive to insulin. This is not wishful thinking. This is a well-documented molecular pathway. The reason you have probably never heard your doctor mention berberine-containing plants is not because the evidence is weak. It is because there is no patent on a plant that grows wild across North America. I need you to listen to this message very carefully, because what I'm about to reveal could protect your health and perhaps even save your life. For a long time, I didn't realize the danger that excess blood sugar represented. I discovered that high glucose levels can increase the risk of heart attack, stroke, vision loss, and even amputations. The scariest thing is that type 2 diabetes often acts silently. Many people believe everything is fine when, in fact, their bodies are already suffering serious damage. And if your blood sugar is high right now, you may be at much greater risk than you imagine. But then I discovered a completely natural method that helped me understand how to balance my blood sugar levels and regain my quality of life. Thousands of people are also discovering this simple method and learning how to naturally reduce excess sugar and avoid the dangers of type 2 diabetes. And there's something important you need to know. All this information is compiled in a special video that we don't know how long will be available. If you want to discover what I discovered and learn a natural way to help control your blood sugar levels, click the link in the first pinned comment now and watch the video before it's taken down. The fourth herb is cinnamon, and before you roll your eyes because you have heard about cinnamon for diabetes and maybe even tried it without results, let me explain what most people get wrong. There are 2 types of cinnamon commonly sold: Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes called true cinnamon, and cassia cinnamon, which is the darker, stronger tasting variety found in most grocery stores. A 2003 study published in Diabetes Care, which remains one of the most cited studies in this space, found that 1 to 6 grams of cassia cinnamon per day reduced fasting blood glucose by 18 to 29%, in people with type 2 diabetes after 40 days. The active compound in cinnamon is called methyl hydroxide chalcone polymer, which has been shown in cell studies to increase insulin signaling by a factor of approximately 20. That means your cells become 20 times more responsive to insulin. The practical problem is that cassia cinnamon contains a compound called coumarin, which in large quantities can stress the liver. Ceylon cinnamon contains far less coumarin and is the safer daily option. Half a teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon stirred into warm water or added to food in the morning, every single morning without exception, is how this herb earns its place in your daily routine. Consistency is everything with cinnamon. People who try it for a week and see nothing are not giving it enough time. The fifth herb is American ginseng, and I want to share a story here that still stays with me. A patient I will call Margaret, a 61-year-old retired teacher from Ohio who came to see me about 5 years ago, had been managing type 2 diabetes for 11 years. She had tried every dietary intervention we discussed. Her A1C hovered around 7.8 despite medication, and she was beginning to experience the kind of fatigue that goes beyond tiredness. The deep cellular exhaustion that people with chronically elevated blood sugar know too well. Her neighbor, an older woman who had emigrated from Korea, suggested she try American ginseng root tea before meals. Margaret was skeptical but desperate enough to try. Within 6 weeks, her fasting glucose had dropped by 22 points. Within 4 months, her A1C came down to 6.9. Was it only the ginseng? I cannot say with certainty, but her diet had not changed. And her medication had not changed. A randomized controlled trial published in the Archives of Internal Medicine in 2000 found that 3 grams of American ginseng taken 40 minutes before a meal reduced post-meal blood glucose by 20% compared to placebo. The active compounds, called ginsenosides, appear to stimulate insulin secretion from the pancreas and improve insulin sensitivity in muscle tissue. American ginseng grows natively across much of the eastern United States and can be cultivated in shaded garden beds. It is a slower-growing plant that rewards patience. The sixth herb is holy basil, also known as tulsi, and this one carries particular importance because it addresses something that most blood sugar conversations completely ignore: the relationship between chronic stress and elevated glucose. When your body is under stress, it releases cortisol. Cortisol tells your liver to dump glucose into your bloodstream because stress historically meant physical danger, and your muscles needed fuel to fight or flee. But in modern life, you are stressed about finances and traffic and deadlines, and your muscles are sitting still while your blood sugar climbs, with no physical activity to bring it back down. Holy basil contains compounds called eugenol and rosmarinic acid that have been shown in multiple studies to lower cortisol levels and improve adrenal function. A clinical study published in the Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine in 2012 found that people taking holy basil leaf extract experienced a 17.6% reduction in fasting blood glucose and a 7.3% reduction in post-meal glucose over an 8-week period compared to placebo. Holy basil is one of the easiest herbs on this list to grow. It thrives in containers, tolerates partial shade, and can be harvested continuously from late spring through early fall. A few fresh leaves steeped in hot water for 10 minutes makes a tea that works on both your nervous system and your metabolic system simultaneously. The seventh herb is Gymnema sylvestre, and this one has been used in Ayurvedic medicine in India for over 2,000 years under the name Gurmar, which translates to sugar destroyer. That name is not an exaggeration. Gymnema contains compounds called gymnemic acids that have a truly unusual property. They temporarily block sugar receptors on your tongue and in your intestinal lining. When you chew a gymnema leaf, you literally cannot taste sweetness for up to an hour. But the more important effect happens lower in your digestive tract. Those same gymnemic acids bind to sugar receptors in your small intestine and reduce how much glucose gets absorbed into your bloodstream after a meal. A study published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology in 1990 followed 22 patients with type 2 diabetes who took gymnema leaf extract for 18 to 20 months. Every single participant was able to reduce their medication dosage, and 5 of the 22 participants were able to discontinue medication entirely and maintain healthy blood sugar levels with gymnema alone. That is a remarkable outcome for a plant that most Western doctors have never prescribed. Gymnema sylvester can be grown in warm climates in the United States, particularly in zones 9 through 11, and can be grown as a houseplant in cooler regions with adequate light. The eighth herb is dandelion, and this is the one I know is going to surprise you the most. The dandelion that you probably spend considerable effort trying to remove from your lawn is, without exaggeration, one of the most medicinally valuable plants in your immediate environment. Dandelion root contains a prebiotic fiber called inulin, which feeds the beneficial bacteria in your gut microbiome. This matters enormously for blood sugar because research published in the journal Cell in 2015 found that the composition of your gut bacteria directly influences insulin sensitivity. Dandelion root also contains a compound called sugaric acid that has been shown in cell studies to inhibit alpha-glucosidase, the same enzyme targeted by the diabetes drug acarbose. When you inhibit that enzyme, the breakdown of complex carbohydrates slows down, and glucose released from a meal enters your blood more gradually rather than in one large spike. Dandelion leaves are also rich in magnesium, and magnesium deficiency has been independently associated with insulin resistance in multiple large population studies, including one published in Diabetes Care in 2004 that found people with low magnesium intake had a 94% higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. You can eat dandelion leaves as salad greens, steep the roasted root as a coffee substitute, or take the root as a tincture. The only caveat is to be absolutely certain that any dandelion you harvest has not been treated with herbicides or pesticides. If you are in any doubt, grow your own from seed. The ninth herb is milk thistle, and while it is most commonly associated with liver health, its role in blood sugar regulation deserves far more attention than it receives. The active compound in milk thistle is silymarin, a group of flavonoids that improves the function of insulin receptors on cell surfaces. Your cells are covered in receptors designed to receive insulin and respond to it by opening their glucose transport channels. In people with type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance, those receptors are essentially desensitized, like a lock that has been used so many times it no longer turns smoothly. Silymarin appears to restore sensitivity to those receptors. A randomized controlled trial published in Phytotherapy Research in 2006 found that type 2 diabetes patients taking silymarin extract for 4 months experienced a 10% reduction in fasting blood glucose and a significant decrease in hemoglobin A1C compared to the placebo group. But silymarin also protects the pancreatic beta cells, the specific cells responsible for producing insulin, from oxidative damage. In type 2 diabetes, chronic inflammation and high blood sugar gradually destroy these cells over time, which is why many people need increasing medication as the years pass. Protecting those cells from further damage is not a small thing. Milk thistle grows readily in most temperate climates and can be found growing wild along roadsides across North America and Europe. The seeds are the most potent part and can be ground and added to smoothies or taken as capsules. The 10th herb is rosemary, and I know some of you are thinking this is too familiar, too ordinary to be taken seriously in this context. Let me be honest with you, the research on rosemary and blood sugar is newer and smaller than some of the other herbs on this list, but the mechanism is compelling. Rosemary contains compounds called carnosic acid and rosmarinic acid that have been shown in laboratory studies to improve glucose uptake in muscle cells and to inhibit digestive enzymes that break down carbohydrates, slowing the rate at which glucose enters your bloodstream after meals. Given that rosemary is completely safe, grows abundantly in most climates, and has numerous other documented benefits for inflammation and cognitive function, incorporating it into your daily cooking is a zero-risk intervention with genuine biological support. Use fresh rosemary generously in cooking, or steep a sprig in hot water for 5 minutes as a tea before meals. The 11th herb is moringa, and I have deliberately saved this one for last because it represents, in my clinical opinion, the most remarkable combination of blood sugar benefits found in any single plant on this list. Moringa oleifera, sometimes called the miracle tree, grows in tropical and subtropical climates and has been used medicinally in South Asia and sub-Saharan Africa for centuries. The leaves contain an extraordinary concentration of isothiocyanates, particularly one called moringa, that has been shown in multiple animal and early human studies to lower blood glucose, reduce inflammation, and improve insulin sensitivity. A randomized crossover study published in the journal Nutrients in 2018 found that consuming moringa leaf powder with a high glycemic meal reduced the post-meal blood glucose spike by 21% compared to the control meal without moringa. But what makes moringa unique is its nutritional density. It contains 25 times more iron than spinach, 17 times more calcium than milk, and is one of the very few plant sources of all 9 essential amino acids. For people with type 2 diabetes who are also dealing with fatigue, inflammation, and nutritional deficiency, which is the majority of the patients I see, moringa addresses multiple problems simultaneously. In warmer parts of the United States, moringa can be grown as a tree or kept manageable as a large container plant. In cooler climates, it can be grown as an annual or purchased as dried leaf powder, which is available in most health food stores. Now, I need to stop and address something important, because I would not be doing my job if I did not. There are things you may be doing right now that are quietly undermining any benefit these herbs might provide, and you deserve to know what they are. The first is drinking fruit juice, even fresh, even 100% natural fruit juice. Whole fruit contains fiber that slows glucose absorption. Juice removes that fiber and delivers pure fructose and glucose directly to your bloodstream in a concentrated form. A glass of orange juice can spike your blood sugar as fast as a glass of soda. The glycemic index of orange juice is 57, compared to a can of Coke at 63. That difference is almost meaningless in practice, and yet orange juice is consistently positioned as a health food. This was not your mistake. You were told this was healthy. It was not your fault. The second thing to be aware of is the so-called healthy whole grain. Products that dominate supermarket shelves: whole grain bread, whole grain crackers, whole grain cereal. The word whole grain on a label does not mean what you think it means. It means the product contains some whole grain flour, but the majority of these products are still primarily refined grain products with their blood sugar spiking properties largely intact. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2010 found that 2 slices of whole grain bread raised blood glucose to the same level as 2 slices of white bread. The confusion you have felt around food choices is completely understandable, and it was not your fault. The third alert is artificial sweeteners. I know this one is controversial, but the research has become increasingly difficult to ignore. A landmark study published in the journal Nature in 2014 found that artificial sweeteners including saccharin, sucralose, and aspartame alter the composition of your gut microbiome in ways that actually impair glucose tolerance. Your gut bacteria regulate how your body processes glucose, and if the sweeteners designed to help you avoid sugar are damaging the microbiome that governs your insulin response, then you are trading one problem for another. Diet soda is not a safe choice for blood sugar management. Sparkling water with a squeeze of fresh lemon is. Here's what I want you to take away from everything you have just learned. Your body is not broken. Your blood sugar numbers are high because your body is responding intelligently, if imperfectly, to an environment that is full of misleading food, inadequate information, and medical advice that has not kept pace with the science. The plants I described today are not magic cures, but they are real, they are accessible, they are backed by genuine research, and many of them may already be growing within reach of your front door. Here's what I want you to do starting today. First, identify which of these 11 herbs you already have access to, whether in your yard, your spice cabinet, or a nearby garden store, and pick the one that resonates most with your situation. If you are dealing with stress-related blood sugar spikes, start with holy basil. If you are managing post-meal glucose spikes, start with fenugreek or gymnema. If you want to support your gut microbiome and address nutritional gaps, start with moringa or dandelion root. Second, commit to a 30-day trial with whichever herb you choose. Not 3 days, not a week. 30 consecutive days with consistent use before you evaluate any result. Third, Keep a simple log of your fasting blood sugar each morning, your post-meal reading 90 minutes after your largest meal, and how your energy feels in the afternoon. Fourth, talk to your doctor before making any changes to your medication, because some of these herbs, particularly berberine-containing plants and gymnema, can have additive effects with diabetes medications, meaning your dose may need to be adjusted downward under medical supervision. Fifth, share this video with one person in your life who is living with elevated blood sugar and does not know these options exist. Not to replace their doctor, but to give them one more tool and one more reason to feel less alone in this. Before I go, I want to ask you two specific things in the comments below. First, which of these 11 herbs are you going to try first and why? And second, have you already been using any of these plants without realizing they had documented effects on blood sugar? I read every comment on this channel, and I respond when I can, because what you share here helps me understand what to cover next. My name is Dr. Michael Hayes, and I have spent my career trying to bridge the gap between what the research says and what patients actually hear in clinical settings. The information I share here is based on published science, not on opinion or trends. Everything I have shared today is educational in nature and is not a substitute for individualized medical advice from your own physician, who knows your full history, your medications, and your specific situation. Please do not change your medication regimen without consulting your doctor first. What I hope you take from this video is not a protocol, but a perspective, that nature has always been working alongside us, and that the answers to some of our most pressing health challenges have sometimes been growing quietly in the most ordinary of places. Take care of yourself. You deserve that.